Hello, everyone, and welcome back to We're the Game. I'm Michael, and that's Luke. And we are gathering together to talk about this week's game of the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks, which did not go the way that either one of us had hoped that it might go, either in the sense of the Cardinals pulling off what we said ahead of time would be an upset, but or B, just competing close in the game. I think pretty much one might argue that basically everything went wrong in this game. Maybe that's too mean. Maybe I'm overthinking it, or maybe I'm not being nearly generous enough in that. Where were you at on this game, Luke, and what did you think about it as we go?
Well, there's a lot. This game, it overnight switched to narrative. So Saturday night, the narrative for the Cardinals' failures were it's all Kyler's fault, all of it. Not really, but it felt that way. That was the only thing you'd hear anyone talk about. Now it's the coach has got to go, which is kind of where we were 4 or 5 weeks earlier. So it's weird. We just kind of bounce back and forth between these things. And I'll just to pick a side, if I've got to pick a side between those two, well, I think Kyler Murray has his flaws, and I'd like to see him in a different uniform, I think, next year. I have very little confidence in the coaching, but that's a different conversation. As for this game, one of the things we talked about going into it was, Jacoby Brissett has been sacked a lot, and he had been sacked 13 times in 3 games. And I had said, man, these are teams that really don't have amazing pass rush.
Yeah.
And now we're about to go against an elite team with an elite pass rush, and everyone knows it. And it went exactly like I feared it would. Now, it said he only got sacked 5 times, only 5 times. Those were all in the first half. They clearly called the dogs off when they were up 35-0 and just went prevent the second half. And they just annihilated him. He never had a chance. Pressure right up the gut, pressure from the sides, everywhere, just clobbered him. Obviously, the 2 big turnovers for touchdowns were huge, but if you take those out and then recontextualize them, probably trying a bit harder in the second half, we still would have gotten completely smothered. The score of 44-22 is not actually indicative to me of what really happened here. And we were only kind of sort of close. It was like, no, we were miles behind them. We were still tying our shoes and they were finishing the race, kind of a thing. So pressure was huge. On the other side of things, our defense wasn't great. We were down a couple of corners, which have been talked about. We were down Mac Wilson. That had been mentioned, and he's kind of he's the green dot, I believe. Normally, he's the on-field captain, and so he's him being out, it mattered. The success they had in the passing game was kind of remarkable, considering they only threw the ball 12 times, but they had a couple of big, just back-breaking shots they took down the field. And so they were it was kind of their day where it seemed like if they were rolling a 20-sided dice, it was just hitting 20 over and over again. So, when you ask me what went wrong, it's kind of, I can't put my finger on it because it's the whole thing. The whole thing went wrong from the coin toss to the shaking of hands at the end. Everything went wrong.
Yeah, it's a strange game because it's not, if we were earlier in the season, it's like this would have been the first game. It'd have been like, man, we're going to get run over by them again later in the year. But you've already played them. The first game was a 23-20 loss. It was much, much closer. I guess maybe to look a little bit deeper at the coaching versus quarterback controversy, and there's a lot of questions I know that Arizona's trying to figure out. Do you feel like, because Kyler did quarterback the first game, but similarly, he got sacked 6 times in that game, threw 2 interceptions. I don't think he fumbled the ball. There were a lot of fumbles in this game on both teams, right? So there were a lot of things there. Do you think the bigger impact was like some change in the scheme? Do you think the bigger impact was the change in the quarterback? Or do you think maybe that, like you'd already pointed out, that the depleted secondary forced some really challenging kind of strategy that you had to use to make up for that ultimately, or maybe all of the above. What do you think about that? Just kind of juxtaposing the two against each other, the game 1 versus game 2.
Yeah, no, game one, I felt like Seattle also kind of took their foot off the gas at some point before they should have, and that's how we got closer in that game. But we just were never down as far. Our defense played better against what they were doing, and while they did get turnovers, I don't think either one of them went directly into the end zone. Well, Kyler didn't have 2 fumbles. He had 2 interceptions. And you could certainly talk about how, yeah, those are probably on Marvin. But regardless, they happened at that exchange. So
Yeah.
there were still problems. Their defense just seems to have our number. We're at 9 games in a row now against Seattle. We have not beat them since 2021. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
On the other side of things, again, I think the corners being down probably hurt us. We've talked about before, it's edge rushers and corners. I think you can be down one or the other if you've got a good duo and be like, we can supplement other places and still have a pretty functional defense in that area. But I think if you're missing both, it's just too much. And again, the numbers for them don't look gaudy because they didn't have to pass. Again, they passed 12 times the entire game. This is not Sam Darnold passed 12 times and then Drew Lock came in and threw it another 20. This is Sam Darnold. That was all the passing. And then they just ran it 46 times. So it's pretty easy to think, and you're probably not wrong. If they had felt like putting 300 or 400 yards on us, maybe they could have done that if they just wanted to go all out. Now, I will say, coming into this game, a quick note, I had hoped that Rashid Shaheed would not just pop off in game 1, and he didn't.
Yeah.
But he very much so did not need to. They tried him on a couple of gadget plays. I think he had an end around that I recall seeing, and like one little pass, but it was just like getting used to the terminology and how they ran the offense, I think. So this kind of function for them, for Seattle, it's felt like it functioned as like a warm-up game for Shaheed. And so we'll see someone else will have to deal with them in full stride this year. But
yeah, I was interested to see that they brought him in and had him do returns. I think that makes sense. But I guess I was almost said hoped. That was not the right word. Expected, though, to see a couple of long balls to him, just because I think that maybe in 3 games, that's where I would assume his major, damage will come against teams. I don't think we really saw, obviously, we didn't see really any of that. But it's also interesting to see how versatile they see him as part of their offense immediately. Like you were saying with end-around plays, returning, getting him a little bit involved in the pass game. I thought that was very interesting for them to get him going with. So the other thing that I thought was interesting is y'all use Bam Knight kind of predominantly, but DeMarcado had a pretty big run, as I recall, in there. It wasn't Bam who had that. Yeah, it's got to be DeMarcado. Do you feel like he's 100% back? And with that being said, maybe that might be the lead in into, how are other injuries? Like y'all are pretty banged up in the secondary and all that. Do you think that they're coming back? Where do we think the injuries are? Y'all had some injuries during this game that were pretty scary. Let's talk injuries a bit. Do you think DeMarcado's 100%, or where do you think he's at?
I think Amari DeMarcado is okay. I don't know that he was ever actually all that hurt. I think he was kind of sitting in the corner after that Titans game for just a minute. And now he's still the 2. So Bam Knight, I actually like the way Bam runs. I don't know that he's just this is rough to say, but I don't know that he's actually good enough to really be a starter, but he has the right attitude. He's explosive when you watch him move. I do like what I see. There's a future for him in the NFL. But Amari DeMarcado is a home run hitter. Like he's an okay between the tackles and all that kind of guy, but like he is looking for that gap where he can run for 55 yards. Or the Titans run that ended so poorly, but I mean, really, that was like a 70-yard run. He just didn't do the last yard. So he's that guy, and he had a couple of those last year too. So he's good in those instances, but I really don't want him out there 20 touches a game. So I think they're using him a way that makes sense. Maybe games where he gets more like 8 or 9, 10 touches make more sense in certain circumstances than the 4 or 5 I think he got this game. But yeah, I think he's just about right. Bam Knight, I think, is going to continue to be the feature back until Trey Benson theoretically comes back, which I think is relatively imminent. He is not out for the season, so we should see Trey Benson. Almost said Trey McBride. Trey Benson come back at some point. Other injuries that were interesting were Zay Jones, of course. He is out for the season. Tore that Achilles. It's a sinking thing for him because I thought he was playing pretty well, and of course he's on a 1-year contract, so he's auditioning for every other team, not just for the Cardinals. Trying to get another big solid contract, and this an Achilles will mess him up going into next year. And a lot of wide receivers, they're never the same after an Achilles. So hoping he can come back. I know there's different grades of different injuries, and hopefully this one's more minor and he can come back and still have something of a career somewhere, because I enjoy watching him play. Kind of similar play style to Michael Wilson, I feel like. And then Walter Nolan was the big scary one when it happened, because he went down in kind of a weird way and then sat down, stayed down, and pointed at his knee. And every Cardinals fan's like, you got to be kidding me. And the good news is it sounds like that is a very minor injury. And there's not even any word I can find that suggests that he'll miss time at this point. So we're optimistic that he will be okay and that we may have, I don't want to say for once, but dodged a bullet. So
take it and run.
As for the other players, Max Melton and Will Johnson, who missed this game, I was not under the impression that they were long-term injuries even going into this game, that they just weren't quite right yet. So again, optimistic that we'll get a bit healthier at some point this season. Well, obviously that's one game out of a minimum of 4 for Kyler Murray. So we'll see him possibly in week, whatever that is, 12 or 13. But yeah, so that's all the injury stuff I've been able to find so far. Glad it was. I mean, it stinks to have the 1 year ender, but I'm glad it was. To be honest, as a fan, I'm glad it wasn't like Paris Johnson or something. So we'll see. Yeah, no,
it's. We talk regularly about how amazing how many injuries, like season-ending injuries, there feels like there is every week. It's been a rough year in that regard. So yeah, sorry to hear about Zay. I keep feeling like he had a way to buy into being the kind of the number 2 on the team. But we'll see. Like you said, hopefully he can come back from this and still be a high-level competitor. Yeah. Trey McBride, of course, had another phenomenal Trey McBride day. I think the big thing for Trey this year is him getting in the end zone, and with some real regularity. That's been a lot of fun to watch. And going back to your point with DeMercado, I wasn't paying enough attention to the receptions he had during the game. They had 3 receptions for 40 yards, and one of those was 34 yards long. So he only touched the ball 7 times, had almost 100 yards, had 70 yards between it. It's not a bad. Oh no, I'm sorry. He did have 100 yards on the day, 60 in the air, 60 on the ground, 40 in the air. Pretty good. I see your point with them. So yeah, I think this is a good one. The other thing you pointed out, worth bringing up, was it's an odd game anytime you lose the turnover battle. And or you win the turnover battle and you still lose. And this is just a bizarre game for sure. Both teams have got to kind of come back around out of this quickly. Seahawks get to go and play the Rams. That should be a phenomenal game. I would expect, although we had some really disappointing ones here. And then you guys get to go and play the oft injured 49ers. And commiserate with them over that, because y'all are just injured in different areas. Yeah. But yeah, well, thank God that one's behind us. It's funny how it's a double letdown, because the Seahawks, like, nobody likes to lose, but it always sucks to lose to the Seahawks. It's like when Dallas loses to the Eagles. But it's good to have this one behind us. Thanks everybody for joining in. We'll look forward to some more good Cardinals football going forward. And we'll see you. I'll count on it. Luke might not. I'll count on it. And then we'll see you guys all next time. Thanks for joining. We'd love if you could give us a like or subscribe. We're on our way towards 200 and got a road ahead of us there. So come join us again next time.